All right, so let's jump into this deep dive. We're tackling a Tang Dynasty poem today by Li Shangyin
Yeah, Li Shangyin.
about, this famous Han Dynasty scholar and official, Jia Yi. We've got the poem itself, obviously, and some good background info to work with.
Sounds good.
So our mission, if you will, is to really kind of peel back the layers here.
Sure.
See what's hiding beneath the surface.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's, a poem that uses history as kind of a springboard to talk about something much bigger, I think.
Okay, I like that.
Like the dynamics of power and leadership and that kind of delicate dance between, those who rule and the people.
Ooh, a historical deep dive, but with a message that still resonates today. Love it. But before we get too deep into the poem itself, can you give us a little background on Jia Yi and Li Shangyin just to set the stage?
Sure. So Jia Yi was this brilliant scholar and advisor during the Han Dynasty. Think sharp insights, bold policy ideas, definitely the kind of guy who ruffled some feathers.
Right.
He was actually exiled for a while, for being a little too outspoken.
Oh, wow. So a controversial figure.
Yeah, you could say that. And then centuries later, you have Li Shangyin, one of the greats of the Tang Dynasty poetry scene. He's famous for his complex, layered style. He often used these historical figures and events to comment on his own time period.
Okay, so Li Shangyin is looking back at Jia Yi's story, but he's really trying to tell us something about his present.
That's interesting. Well, let's dive into the poem. The first verse really jumped out at me. There's this sense of urgency, like an emperor desperately seeking out talent.
You're right on the money there. The first verse describes Emperor Wen of Han, and he's actively searching for talented individuals. And he specifically wants people who've been banished, which is interesting. And he summons Ji Yi. He praises his unparalleled talent. But, there's already tension building here, right? Like he recognizes Ji Yi's ability, but he also acknowledges that this guy has been cast aside. Right. It's like the poem is already hinting that things might not go so smoothly for Jia Yi.
Yeah.
You have this brilliant figure being called back in, but what happens?
Well, that's where the second verse takes a really interesting turn. Li Shangyin paints this striking picture. The emperor's consulting with Jia Yi late at night, but here's the catch. There's an empty seat before the emperor. And get this, he's asking Jia Yi for advice on ghosts and spirits.
What? Seriously? Ghosts and spirits.
Yeah, and the poem very deliberately doesn't mention anything about the common people or their problems. It's like a pointed omission.
Okay, this is almost absurd, right?
Okay.
This emperor has got one of the sharpest minds in the kingdom at his disposal. And he's off in the supernatural realm instead of dealing with real-world issues.
Exactly. It's like Li Shangyin is holding up a mirror to those in power. It's a critique of leaders who are totally out of touch with what their people actually need.
Yeah, their priorities are completely skewed.
They're focused on things that don't actually matter to the average person. It reminds me of that saying, fiddling while Rome burns, focused on these trivial things while real problems are being ignored.
It's a perfect analogy. So Li Shangyin is using this specific historical anecdote, but he's actually talking about something much bigger, right? Like the timeless challenges of leadership.
You got it. It's about setting the right priorities, really listening to people, and understanding the actual problems that need solutions. And this applies to any leader, anytime, any place.
So how does Li Shangyin manage to do this? What techniques is he using to get this message across so powerfully?
One of the most effective techniques he uses is juxtaposition. He's placing contrasting ideas side by side.
Okay, like what?
Like the emperor's obsession with ghosts and the very real everyday struggles of the people. It's this sharp contrast that highlights how disconnected the emperor is from what truly matters.
It's like he's forcing us to see the absurdity of the situation. And then it makes you wonder, right? What would it look like if the emperor actually cared about the well-being of his people? How would his actions be different?
You're getting to the core of the poem's message. It's not just a critique of one historical figure. It's a challenge to all leaders throughout history to really think about their priorities, think about their actions. Are they serving themselves, or are they serving the people they're supposed to lead?
So if we zoom out a bit, what can we, as listeners, take away from this centuries-old poem? How can we apply these insights to our own lives?
I think the poem's a call to action for all of us. We need to critically evaluate our leaders, question their priorities, hold them accountable for the well-being of the people they represent, because true leadership is about service and responsibility. It's not about personal gain or distractions.
Wow, this deep dive has been fascinating. We started with this poem about a historical figure, and now we're talking about the very nature of leadership. It's incredible. What are your final thoughts on the poem's relevance today?
I think the poem's a really powerful reminder that the challenges of leadership are, well, they're enduring, they're not going away. It's this constant struggle to stay connected to people's needs, to resist getting caught up in distractions, and to really focus on what matters most. The poem's like this invitation for all of us to think about how these challenges play out in our own time and to consider what we can do to ensure our leaders are truly serving the best interests of the people.
It's definitely something to think about. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But we encourage you to keep exploring this poem and its message on your own. Think about what qualities of leadership you value and how we can all play a part in creating a world where leaders are genuinely dedicated to the well-being of their people.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time.
See ya!